Hi there. Welcome to Peninsula Players Presents. And with me today, I am very happy to welcome Linda Fortunato. Linda, hello.
Hello.
How are you doing?
I'm great. I'm so happy to be here with you.
Oh, good. Good. We're happy to have you. Um, Before we go on, I want to give a little bio of Linda and why the heck she's here. And that's primarily because Linda has spent 17 seasons at Peninsula Players Theatre from 1996 to last year, 2019. I think that's right, Linda, right?
That's right.
And Linda has worked extensively all over the Chicago area, which we'll go into a little bit later. And she has been nominated for five Joseph Jefferson Awards and received a Jeff Award in 2014 for her choreography of 42nd Street at Theater at the Center. Linda, well, I think is pretty amazing, and she's a person of many hats, including a dancer, actor, choreographer, director, business manager, teacher, artistic director, wife, and mother. And she currently lives in Evanston, Illinois, with her husband, Sean Fortunato, an actor whom I know a lot of you know, and her son, Asher. So there you go. And I read that little bio and all of the things you're capable of doing, and it seems like you should have lived like three times as long to be able to do all those things. You've done quite a lot.
I like to keep busy.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. So let's go back and before we talk about your time at the Players, uh, how did you start out in theater?
It was just something I always did. From music class in elementary school, when we got to put on a play, I was always happy to do that. I took dance lessons when I was very young, then was in theater all through school, but it was just something I always did and did for fun. It didn't really occur to me that I could do it as my job. I had already, my senior year of high school, I had selected a college, knew where I was going to school, and then it hit me, wait a minute, I could do theater as my job, and went to my parents and said, I think I want to study theater. And my dad said, great, but I think you need to find a different college because where I was going to school didn't even have a theater department.
Oh,
So I was a little late realizing that it's what I wanted to do, but it's something that I've always done.
oh, not late at all. I mean, I didn't get into theater until the end of my junior year in college. But as a kid, you said you studied dance. Was that something like I know a lot of parents put their kids into that, but was it something you wanted to do? Did you like to
I
do?
loved doing it. I don't really remember how it started, and I didn't study very long, only probably 3 or 4 years, which sounds long, I guess, but for people that studied their entire lives, it seemed pretty brief. And then when I got into college, I really more seriously started studying.
So where did you go to
I
college?
went to Millikan University in Decatur, Illinois.
And they did have a theater
Yes,
department.
they did.
And
They have an excellent theater program.
and then from there, you started working professionally, I think, while you were still at school.
Yes, the summer between my junior and senior year of college, I did a season of summer stock in Colorado. And then as soon as I graduated, my first job was a show in Okinawa, Japan, that I went there for 4 months.
And what was that like?
It was amazing. The people were terrific. The Okinawa is the southernmost island in the chain of islands that make up
Mhm.
Japan, and it's the same latitude as Hawaii. So it was the same climate and landscape similar to Hawaii. So it was pretty magical.
Oh, wow. And did you learn to speak the language while you were there?
We did. We had a bit of a crash course before we went and knew enough to get by. But the thing that
Hmm.
was funny is every time we would speak to someone in Japanese, they would answer us in English. And we would say, no, no, we want to practice Japanese. And they said, oh, we'll do that later. Let's practice English first. So the fact that we made the effort, then
Yeah.
everyone wanted to just converse in English.
Oh, God, what a wonderful experience.
It was great.
And then from there you came to Chicago
I did.
and you started working professionally here in Chicago.
Yes.
And I think you said you started at the musical theater houses.
Yes, Drury Lane Oakbrook and Candlelight Dinner Playhouse was still here, and the Marriott Theater, and did a lot of shows at those places.
Yeah. And then somewhere in there, you started, or maybe you already had been choreographing.
I had, yeah, I had been choreographing through school, and I have a minor in dance with a focus on choreography. And so while I was performing, I was doing some choreography on the side, mostly educational setting, high schools and colleges. And then as time went on, I started focusing more on that area and finding that choreography and directing was something I was really excited about, and started to focus that on that transition.
And having worked with you myself, I know how organized you are in those areas. I mean, as a side note, when you choreograph a show, what is your how do you start your process with that?
I start, but the same way I do when I am a performer in a show or as a director, it's just by reading the show over and over. Also, as a choreographer, listening to the score, and then I start to get ideas, start to see images, and then just slowly and painstakingly work my way through the show number by number.
So you must have studied lots of different styles of dance.
I was fortunate to take a couple theater dance classes that were, the curriculum was different styles, different time periods of dance. And then I also do a lot of research whenever I approach a show. So if it's a style that I don't know, I love diving into archival footage and tutorials to learn different styles, to be able to then draw my own vocabulary from what I research.
And that also includes tap dancing, which you've done a bit of.
Yes, that's probably my favorite.
Is it?
Yeah.
Well, I think there was a lot in 42nd Street,
Yes.
right? Yes, for
Hmm.
which you won a Jeff Award. And then, so you transitioned to, uh, so choreography was part of your continuing journey. And when did directing come into it?
I studied directing in college and really liked it. So then, the more I got into choreography and collaborating with directors, the more I sort of was sitting next to that position and realizing how much I had a desire to do that as well. And so then I really started pursuing that. And interestingly, when I started working professionally as a director, it was primarily in non-musicals. I was working professionally as a director for quite a few years before I actually directed a musical.
And what is it that attracts you to directing?
There's I just love storytelling,
Hmm.
and I love collaboration. And the rehearsal room is one of my favorite places on the entire planet. Whatever shape or form that rehearsal room is, it's one of my favorite places to be. And sharing a space with artists, from the early stages of planning a production to sharing the room with designers, production managers, stage managers, all the way through getting into the rehearsal process and sharing the room with actors is is just such an exciting process to me. And then seeing the end result is always a thrill.
A lot of voices to listen to,
Hmm.
but at the end, you're at the helm.
Right. But I feel like I'm always smarter because of the amazing people around me.
Indeed. Um, so, uh, as in your career, you were working in Chicago,
Mhm.
and then in '96, you did your first show at Peninsula Players,
Yes.
which was the musical Crazy for You.
Mhm.
Was that, had you auditioned for the
I
Players?
did. Yes. There. I auditioned, went to a dance call, danced and sang, and was lucky enough to be hired.
Yes, and that was a big show.
Yes.
Was
Another
it?
tap dancing show.
Another one, yes. And then in '97, you were in Guys and Dolls
Hmm.
and The Woman in Black,
Hmm.
which was a whole nother adventure. And in fact, you had some ghost stories connected with that play. And then you were also in Moon Over Buffalo,
Yes.
which, and at the beginning of that show, the very beginning of the show is a rehearsal for Cyrano de Bergerac. And
Mhm.
I think I had you as a musketeer in that.
Yes, you did. I had a stick-on goatee that I would put on and my big padded male costume uniform.
Well, thank you for doing that.
Sure.
Of course, you went on to play the ingenue,
Right.
the
Later
young
in the play,
lovely.
yes.
Yes, yes. And then in 98, now that was an interesting year because you weren't performing at all that year.
That's right.
What did you do?
I became the business manager that year.
And
Um,
how did that happen?
well, I was not performing that year. I don't think I even auditioned that year just because there wasn't anything I was right for in the season. But that was the year that the players transitioned from a paper ticketing system to a computerized ticketing system. And it happened to be a system that I had experience with. And so I was hired to come up for 5 days to a week to train everybody how to use that system.
Hmm.
And while I was there, Todd Schmidt, who was the general manager at the time, kept saying, "Well, you're going to stay all summer," and making a joke of it. And finally I said, "Well, what would I do?" And he'd say, "You'd be the business manager." And before that point, there hadn't been a business manager. And I said, "Well, what does the business manager do?" And so we sat down and talked about it. And I said, "Okay." So I stayed for the whole summer.
And that was also Sean's first season at the Players, I believe.
That's right. Might have been part of the reason I wanted to stay the whole summer.
Now, had you guys known each other before that?
Yes, we had met the previous spring and had started dating just before he came up for the summer.
Oh, and so that season furthered your relationship a bit.
Yes,
Indeed. And then in 99, you were a little bit of both. I think you were in Blithe Spirit and It Runs in the Family,
yes,
and you were the business manager. Is
that's
that
right.
right?
That was a very busy season.
It was, I can imagine.
Yes,
Uh,
the role that I played in It Runs in the Family was very small. I was only on stage, I think, 3 times, very briefly. So I would be in the office working, and the assistant stage manager would run over from the rehearsal hall and say, "Okay, we're ready for you." And then I'd go rehearse my scene and then go back to the office.
oh my. And then uh, I think in 2000, in the next year in 2000, you started teaching at Loyola.
That's right. Hmm.
And you were there for a couple years, and in 2014, is that right?
Yes, and I've gone back several times and choreographed several of their musicals in that
And
time as well.
what were you teaching while you were there?
I've at that point they didn't have a dance minor as they do now, and so the class I taught was just called dance. So I had a lot of freedom to teach. It was primarily theater majors, so I taught different
Mhm.
styles of dance for the theater, and I taught an acting for non-theater majors. And then much later, when I came back, and there is now a terrific dance department, I taught a tap dance class for theater majors.
And you've done teaching elsewhere also, so there's something about that that you enjoy.
Yes, definitely. I've also taught at Columbia College Chicago, and working with students. I think it's very similar to what I was saying before. That joy of sharing a room with people, that
Mhm.
collaboration, and especially college age students who are just so eager and hungry to learn and explore their craft. It's just a really exciting journey to be a part of.
Yes, indeed. And then in 2002, you were back at the Players in Dames at Sea, the musical, and musical comedy Murders of 1940,
Mhm.
which I directed, silly play. And then in 2004, and you were in Fools by Neil Simon, and you choreographed Into the Woods, the Sondheim musical. And you had mentioned before that Fools was one of your highlights at the Players.
Yes. It's one of my favorites. I think it's one of your favorites too.
It absolutely is. It was
That
one
I,
of the
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say it was one of the sweetest and funniest shows I've ever been involved with.
Right. And I think we've talked about the fact that reading it, it's like, oh yeah, this is a nice play. But then when the more we got into it and really discovered how lovely the play really is.
Yes, I loved it. And then and I should say along with this, Sean, your husband, has been up there also during these
Yes.
seasons. And then in 2006, which was the opening of the new theater, you were in Noises Off
Mhm.
and you choreographed Cabaret, which was a big show.
Yes.
It was. And then I think that was the same year, as you mentioned, you started teaching at Columbia, which you did until 2015. Are you still
Yes.
there? Or?
I since then I went it back for one semester, but 2015, 2006 is that what we said? Yeah, 2006 to 2015, I was there every semester.
And was that teaching dance movement also?
Yes, it was a lot of dance for theater majors, tap dance for theater majors, as well as acting classes for musical theater
Oh,
acting
wonderful.
classes.
And then in 2007, you became not Linda, went from Linda Parsons to Linda Fortunato.
Yes. Yes, we were married in 2003. So I
Yes.
legally changed my name at that point, but then professionally changed it in 2007.
And I guess it was just easier legally
Yes.
yes, and then and in 2007 you choreographed Little Shop of Horrors, which I was in also, and that opening number was one of my favorite things I've ever done. It was so cool what you did with it.
Oh, thanks. It's a really great song itself. It's a great number in the show,
Yeah.
and we had just such a fantastic cast. It was a dream to choreograph those people.
And then in 2008, your son was born,
Yes, he was.
Asher.
Yep.
And where did that name come from?
We There's a character in a book named Ash with the last name Ash. It's was one of Sean's favorite books. It was actually his first gift to me was that book, and so we started with the name Ash and then wanted a longer version, so we went with Asher.
Nice, nice. And then in 2010, you choreographed a Little Night Music, the Sunday musical, and you were in Comic Potential. And I remember during Little Night Music, it was a Sunday evening, and the actress playing Madame Armfelt was very, very ill and had to be taken to the hospital. And I think the show was at 7:30, and I called you because you had choreographed it and knew the show very well. I
Right.
called you about 10 after 7, I
I
remember,
think so.
and you were not even there.
No, it was the first time I had gone off property in weeks.
And then you came back,
Yep, I was in Ephraim and I got your phone call.
and you came back, and then they found a costume and a wig, and you went on for Madame Armfelt that night.
Yes. Well, and I remember the phone call because you had directed the show. And
Yeah.
so you called me and said, "Can you do it?" And I said, "Are you serious?" And you said, "Well, it's either you or me." So it was me.
As pretty as I am, I think you were the better choice. And then let's see, in 2011, you were in Importance of Being Earnest, and you directed the Fox on the Ferry, which I think was the first show you directed at the
That's right,
Players.
it was.
Yes, a silly show. And then in 2012, you were in the Nerd. No, you directed the Nerd
Mhm.
by Larry Shue, and you choreographed Chicago, which again you indicated as one of your highlights up at the Players.
Yes. I loved working on that show. Again, a show I did with you that you directed. And it was, the process was fantastic. And it's just a piece that I really love. And it was kind of a crazy process for me getting to rehearsal because we had a 4-year-old at the time. And so during the day, while he was playing on the grounds of the Players, and I would walk around with my music, choreographing a step here or there while supervising him climbing a tree or something. So it was memorable for that reason too, and then just it was just such a impressive, the scope of that show and the talent in that show, and we just had so much fun putting it together.
And I have to tell you how much I love working with you in that way and collaborating with you. And it's rare that we're not on the same page, which is really, really wonderful. And then in 13, you were in Sunday in the Park with George, the musical, and you were a movement consultant on it, and you directed a brand new play called Once Upon a Time, written by Joe Faust.
Huh?
And in 2014, you directed Agatha Christie's And Then There Were None, which of course had the challenge of, I think, at one scene break, there's a dead body that had to leave the stage, and if the sides were up, it,
Yes.
you could see everything.
Yes, I don't exactly remember how we solved it, but I do remember that was an issue.
I think basically, I think it was Tim. He just had to basically get up and walk off stage. I
Right?
don't.
Yeah.
And then in 2015, you were in we did the world premiere of A Real Lulu, and you directed Lend Me a Tenor,
Mhm.
which you also mentioned as a highlight.
Yes. That Lend Me a Tenor has been a favorite play of mine for a long time. And I actually, before directing it, I was in it. And Sean and I played opposite each other. We played the young couple, Max and Maggie, and then was thrilled to be able to revisit it as a director. And Sean was in it again, this time as Tito, the opera singer.
Uh-huh. A very fun show, very fun. And then that was 2015. And then in 2016, you started working as artistic director of Theater at the Center in Munster, Indiana.
That's right.
And that was, and congratulations on that.
Thank you.
And that was a big step.
Yes, yeah. A big shift from it felt like a big shift stepping into it, but then I realized, oh, these are all things I've done before. I've just never done them all in the same place at the same time.
Yes, and you've been there since then.
Yes,
Yes, and then so you were busy the next few summers, I remember, with working there and getting it
right.
all under your belt. And then you came back in 2018 to direct Living on Love at
Mhm.
the Players. And in 2019, last year, you directed and choreographed the musical Ghost,
Yes,
which you also mentioned as a highlight.
yeah, there's so many highlights. Yes, that it's a really beautiful play, and a lot of technical challenges. Um, Maybe a larger show than I had directed at the Players before.
Hmm.
So doing something on that scale, with the amazing designers that I had on my team was really a thrill.
And speaking of highlights, one of the last ones you mentioned was at the Players was the relationships and friendships you've made there at the
Yes.
Players, and that's a wonderful thing to hear.
Yeah, when you first asked me about highlights, well, and as I just said, there's so many. It's like, how do you narrow it down? But I just kept coming back to the Players is such an amazing place for the work that we do and the art and the collaboration and what we put on the stage. But behind all of that are the relationships and the friendships that we make, even if it's someone you just work with one season or someone that you've worked with 10 seasons in a row. And so it really is a home away from home, in emotionally, artistically, spiritually, and it's a really special place in my heart and as part of my family too. As you know, as you've mentioned, that Sean and I and now our son Asher have been up there together so many times. It really is our second home in a way.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, Linda, thank you so much for being here. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, and hope things continue to go well for you in this crazy time
Thank you,
with
and
you
to
and your
you too.
family. All right. Take care.
Thanks.
All right. Bye bye.
Bye.